Good evening, I'm Pauline Verzosa.
And I'm Shawn Yao.
And sitting in for Ces Oreña-Drilon, I'm Edwin Gao. The big stories tonight. The entire Philippines is now under a state of calamity in the wake of Typhoon Tino's onslaught and in anticipation of another storm projected to be more powerful.
And more charges are referred and filed against supposed key people in the flood control scandal, including the former Public Works chief and dismissed engineers with questionable lifestyles.
And over in the United States, the Trump administration's 2.0 marks its first year with the first major election day defeat, a protracted government shutdown, and concerns about the economy.
We are continuing our relief and support for those who were hit by Typhoon Tino. Makapaghanda tayo ng mabuti dito naman sa parating na Typhoon Juan. Then it is a national calamity.
The entire country is now under a state of calamity. This was announced by President Bongbong Marcos today after a situation briefing on Typhoon Tino with his cabinet and the Office of Civil Defense. The declaration was recommended to the president after the damage caused on central Philippines by Typhoon Tino. It is also in preparation for incoming Super Typhoon Uwan, which is projected to enter the country by Friday evening or Saturday morning. Now, what does a national state of calamity mean? Well, much like localized declarations, this will facilitate faster release of funds and procurement of supplies to address typhoon damage nationwide. Also, a price freeze on basic necessities will be implemented for 60 days unless lifted by the president.
We are continuing our relief and support for those who were hit by Typhoon Tino, but we are also doing everything that we can para ma-anticipate at makapaghanda tayo ng mabuti dito naman sa parating na Typhoon Uwan. Ilang regions na yan. There will be almost 10 regions, 12 regions that will be affected. So pagka ganun karami, ganun ang scope, then we will really have to, then it is a national calamity.
As of today, the NDRRMC reports a total of 114 dead from Typhoon Tino, but unverified figures put the death toll at 130, and that's in Cebu alone. The province suffered its worst flooding to date from Typhoon Tino. The number of dead could climb further, with 127 people listed as missing in Cebu and Negros Occidental.
Now, at the moment, there is no cyclone affecting the country's weather, but that is expected to change in the next couple of days. Former Typhoon Tino, which left the Philippine area of responsibility early this morning, is now approaching Vietnam. Once it makes landfall, it will rapidly weaken. Nevertheless, occasional rains could affect areas of Luzon, including Metro Manila. This will be due to the northeast monsoon. Meantime, tropical storm Fong has slightly intensified. Again, it is forecast to enter PAR late tomorrow evening or early morning Saturday and will then be called Uwan. Fong may reach typhoon category by Friday and could develop into a super typhoon before making landfall by Sunday. The current forecast scenario predicts either Isabela or Aurora as areas of landfall, with signal number 5 as the highest possible wind signal.
Meantime, failed flood control projects are to blame for the massive flooding in Cebu. That's the conclusion of both Governor Pam Baricuatro and Public Works Secretary Vince Dizon. Images from Typhoon Tino's aftermath showed, for instance, of a river wall in Talisay getting defaced and a flood control project in the municipality of Liloan being damaged at the height of flooding. Meanwhile, the DPWH has its eyes set on relief and recovery at the moment, and Dizon promises to investigate these developments.
I think we have clearly answered that question. Obviously, not. Di ba? Poorly planned, poorly executed, and we don't know kung may kagakuhan din dito. So that will be up to the ICI investigators to find out. Pero definitely, kailangan may mga mananagot dito. Guides were lost here. Hindi to basta bahay lang.
Right now, many residents of Cebu province are still reeling from the effects of Typhoon Tino. In Talisay City, some barangays have almost been wiped out after Mananga River overflowed, left behind as thick mud that locals are still struggling to clean up. 7 were killed in Talisay City in the aftermath of massive flooding and landslides triggered by the typhoon. Over in Liloan, 40 cadavers have been recovered, 11 of whom have yet to be identified. Most residents lost everything and are now looking for clothes, food, and other provisions in the mud.
Walang-wala na, sir. Pati pira, wala na. Wala kaming pagkain. Iba na, wala na. Ubus tanan, pati bahay namin, wala.
And speaking of the Mananga River, it has been one of the reasons why the former Cebu governor was earlier probed by the Ombudsman. We now speak to former Cebu Governor Gwen Garcia over the phone. Ma'am, magandang hapon and magandang gabi po. And thank you for joining us tonight.
Yes, good evening, Ed, and good evening to Shawn and Pauline. Good evening to all that are listening.
Thank you for joining us this evening, ma'am. Ma'am, of course, maraming nagulat dun sa bagsik ng pagbaha dun sa Cebu province, including, of course, Cebuanos. Now, despite that, data released by official sources show that Cebu is one of the provinces with the most flood control projects. 414, I understand, in the last 3 years, up to 26 billion and so forth. But despite this po, grabe yung pagbaha. What do you think? From your perspective, what do you think was the reason kung bakit sobra-sobra yung baha?
Well, first of all, let me just clarify what you said. You speak of 26 billion for Cebu province, but that 26 billion are not provincial funds. That's the national budget.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
And the national budget is allocated to the DPWH, which in turn distributes these so-called flood control projects, many of which were insertions in the budget.
Mm-hmm.
These are all distributed. The province of Cebu has 8 districts, congressional districts, from the 1st to the 7th, and then we have the lone district of Mandaue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The province has not touched, nor can even be included in the implementation of this 26 billion. Ako rin nagulat umabot pala ng ganon. Alam mo, during my time, I kept on insisting sa DPWH, before you implement any program, secure a sanggunian approval.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of the province, we passed this ordinance because this is in accordance with Republic Act 7160, otherwise known as the Local Government Code.
Mm-hmm.
Section 2 in the Declaration of Principles. Section 16, which is generally known as the General Welfare Clause. And Sections 27 and 28, all specifically state, first of all, in giving local government its autonomy. And then it states about a power of a chief executive to invoke Section 16 when the general welfare of its constituents is at stake. Sections 27 and 28 are very, very clear that all national government projects and programs must first be consulted with and should include the local government in the planning stage. And further, it states government authorities may not implement any program or project without prior approval from the sanggunian.
Yes, ma'am.
Ang nasa local government code, sanggunian lang. And we know very well, meron tayong, sa barangay, sangguniang barangay, meron tayong sa sangguniang bayan, sangguniang panglungsod. So in order to enable this particular section, the provincial board passed a provincial ordinance stating all of these related sections of the local government code, insisting that all programs and projects must first secure approval from the Sangguniang Panlalawigan or the provincial board.
Yes, ma'am.
We have a provincial development council meeting prior to the enactment of our budget or even the submission from the chief executive to the Sangguniang Panlalawigan of the annual budget.
Yes, ma'am.
And we also call on all national government, that is a requirement, no? We call all national government agencies to present their proposed projects and programs for the following year. And we approve this. But how could we even have any inkling na these are insertions? Na pala merong mga flood control after na. After, it starts, that starts with the national expenditure. That's the NEP, National Expenditure Program. It goes on to become the General Appropriations Budget, and then it's enacted into law, and that becomes the GAA, or the General Appropriation Act. As far as kami, mga local governments, yung pinapakita lang sa amin, yung kanilang pre-propose. So, concreting here, solar lighting there, a bridge. Pero itong mga flood control na to, as has been proven, in fact, these billions, even trillions, were subsequently inserted after.
Okay.
So, may I just clarify, kasi yung presentation, number 2 nga ang Cebu, sa karamihan ng, the huge amount, no? We're 26 billion. But it's always mentioned Cebu province. Hindi po yan dinownload sa province of Cebu.
Yes, ma'am.
Nasa DPWH yan, and then distributed kung anong districts na gusto nilang malagyan ng flood control. As I said, the province encompasses 8 congressional districts.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, actually, ma'am, we don't mean to imply that these were provincial projects. We were just saying that these were projects for Cebu. Actually, given nga, the question nga is, what do you think is the reason kung bakit pa rin bumaha, given the pagkarami-rami pong in-implement dapat ang DPWH dun po sa inyong probinsya. And also, as you said nga naman, you should be consulted, and that is in the law. The local government unit should be consulted. Were you consulted as far as, number 1, the kinds of projects to be implemented in your province, and number 2, whether or not these projects were faithfully implemented and finished?
Okay. Alam mo, 3 years ago, kami ang kauna-unahan, and I think up to now, that passed this ordinance insisting that national NGAs or national government agencies must first consult, plan, and then seek approval. And even in the implementation stage, in accordance with Republic Act 7160, kailangan talaga involved ang LGUs. But when this ordinance was passed, there was, shall we say, at that time, the ILG secretary noon, si Abalong, had to fly all the way to Cebu and ask to be enlightened. And I said, you were mayor before. You know how these DPWH people, they just start their projects without consultation with us, and these do not align with all our own programs. I know in Cebu City, hindi, by the way, sa Cebu City, sabihin ko lang to. This is what I know. But Cebu City is not under the province of Cebu. In Cebu City, kung ilan na yan ng mga drainage na ginagawa ng DPWH, hindi natatapos. Kaya nga, when yung mga torrential rains happen, talagang bumaha. And I'm glad you mentioned about Mananga River. You talked about my suspension by then Ombudsman Martires. Precisely, I was desilting. Yung desilting, mas kinukuha yung lahat ng mga siltation sa Mananga River because during that time, El Nino yon last year, 8 local government units, including Cebu City, which is a franchise area of MCWD, wala ng tubig. MCWD could no longer provide. They were down to 33% of the total 100% requirement. Kaya nga, we, together with MCWD, together with DPWH, and together with the DANR, the Environmental Management Bureau, the Bureau of Lands, Penro, all related government agencies, we met several times together with the local government of Talisay City, Mayor Sam Sambullas, and the local government of Cebu City. The mayor then was Raymond Garcia, because our aim was to desilt. We had 7 contractors desilting the river. And for that, I was suspended kasi hindi yata alam ni Martires the difference between quarrying and desilting. Kung sana tinuloy yung desilting, edi because I was instructing them that let us widen that river to at least 40 meters. May mga choke points kasi yan eh. Let us widen it because yung mga choke points na yan, yung mga corner na very narrow, yan mag-build up more siltation. And possibly kung grabe yung tubig, magbabaha talaga yan. And I asked, let us then desilt up to 3 meters down. Now, ito ang sasabihin ko sa inyo, Ed. The funny thing then was, 7 contractors yun. Kirante or QM Construction was one that volunteered. Alam mo, walang gastos yun sa gobyerno. I was even charging them, or the province of Cebu was charging these contractors 60 pesos per metric ton. We issued as a special waste disposal permit. Sila pa nagbabayad. This was revenue for the province, and we would then have been able to deepen the Mananga River. Because underneath, nandun yung mga springs, nandun yung tubig. Ito si QM, pinili niya talaga yung area kung saan nakalagay, yung ginagawa niya na flood control. Yung contractor beside him, kasi these were now divided into 7 parts, yung contractor beside him, ayaw niyang padaanin because yun lang ang entrance doon eh. Ayaw padaanin. So, sumumbong sa akin, pinawagan ko si Alan Kirante, sinabi ko, ba't hindi ka magpapadaan? This is of national, we have declared a state of calamity, wala ng tubig. This is an emergency. So, ayun, pinadaan niya. Ngayon ko lang nalaman, kaya pala ayaw niya padaanin yung contractor na yan. Kasi, sinabihan niya yung contractor, huwag ka masyadong lumapit kung saan daw yung flood control niya. Makikita yung sheet pile niya, 3 meters lang ang pagkabaon. Where that is supposed to have gone down to 9 or 12 meters. Alam mo yung na-discover ni Secretary Vince doon sa Misamis ba yun? Na 3 meters lang?
Sa Nauhan.
Yun talaga. Yun ang nangyari dito, dyan, sa Talisay. But I only heard about that ngayon na. At that time, I was focused on the desilting so we could produce water. And for that, Martires suspended me just a few days before election. At siya lang, walang investigation. Hindi man lang ako nakasagot. Walang recommending approval. Siya lang, a solo signature by Martires. Which is why, when I went to the Court of Appeals issued a TRO. And subsequently, this case has been dismissed.
Ma'am, so pag kung hindi po nagka-problema sa Mananga River,
is no longer around.
Kung hindi po nagka-problema sa Mananga River, hindi sana ganito kagrabing baha. Is that what you're saying now?
Sana kung natuloy natin, kung natuloy natin yung desilting doon. But Martires issued a suspension order against me.
And therefore, Governor, hindi po natapos yung buong project that was broken into 7 parts. I wanted to ask kasi 2024 yon, if my data is correct. Natapos po ba yung project as far as you know? Or kung hindi, like ilang % completion as a whole? If you take the 7 parts. Go ahead.
Sige. Let me just give you a fuller perspective of Mananga River. Downstream, from the MCWD Weir Dam, may Weir Dam doon sa MCWD. Downstream, may ECC na already issued to the province of Cebu by the Environmental Management Bureau. Upstream, from the Weir Dam of MCWD, upstream and all the way to the Cebu Protected Area landscape, we were still applying for the ECC. Kaya nga, we got a temporary or approval, no, by the relevant agencies as regards the desilting. But the intention talaga was to continue this desilting and widening of the Mananga River. Because even then, sabi ng mga barangay kapitan doon na sa taas, no, sabi nila, kahit konti lang daw ulan, bumabaha na. When I looked at it, nagpa-drone footages tayo dyan. May mga choke points yung mga kurbada. Kaya I said, we really have to maintain at least 40 meters. I told DPWH that. narinig, and they heard that. They were always part of the meeting.
Yes, but,
But then-
Governor, sorry to interrupt,
Yes.
but if we're looking at footage kasi marami rin pong bahay, so it would be, ano po yung plano nyo before, no, para paalisin yung mga settlers or yung mga residents on the riverbanks? Kasi kung iwa-widen nyo po, gusto nyong palaparin, kailangan nyo munang paalisin yon. And was that plan in the provincial, kumbaga may plano ba yung province since before na ito nga yung dapat gawin dahil nga bumabaha, like you said?
Like a master plan.
Okay.
Yes.
May I just describe the role of the province vis-a-vis the component city? Talisay is a component city of the province of Cebu. So we are a second level local government unit. First level, it's Talisay City that deals with this, yung mga nakatira doon. And Mayor Sam Gullias then said, can we just look for a more palatable solution? I told him, Mayor, I leave it to you. Pero what we really need is they have to set back when we have these choke points. And he said, give me time. I have to talk to these people, knowing fully well that the elections were coming up in 2025. So ayoko naman na i-disrespect ang power ng first level LGU, which is the city of Talisay. Kaya nga, in the desilting of the Mananga River, I did not do that alone. Always in attendance were the chief executives of the two local government units, which is spanned by the Mananga River. That's Talisay City and Cebu City.
So may plano nga po since before?
Yes, certainly. And then after that, the province would apply na i-expand yung ECC coverage na hindi lang downstream up to maybe about 7 kilometers upstream.
Governor, Secretary Vince Dizon did acknowledge also na poorly planned and poorly executed talaga yung flood control project sa Cebu. That's why he wants to launch a thorough investigation. Pero Governor, para sa inyo, sino po ba talaga dapat ang managot dito?
I hope that he really does. I am all praises for Secretary Vince Dizon. He's very, very serious about what he's doing. Actually, with the fast eroding credibility of the public on many officials today, I think he is that spark of credibility na we could hold on to. And dapat talaga managot. Alam mo, you are asking me a question which I think kayo and including the listeners already know kung sinong dapat managot. From DPWH to the contractors and to whoever else.
But Governor, going back also to Typhoon Tino, this was really one of the worst typhoons and to hit the province. I know it was the worst flash flood to hit the province. Waters rose dramatically in as quick as 10 minutes. Kaya marami po talagang na-surprise. They didn't anticipate this. Pero ano po ba talaga yung provincial plan when it comes to disaster mitigation under your leadership, Governor?
Well, we have many rivers in the province of Cebu. For some of them, the rivers that are in the western side, meron na tayong environmental compliance certificate dyan. And we are now in the process, hindi na pala ako governor. We were in the process of desilting, including opening up yung bang, we say that's the mouth of the river, where the river water meets the sea. So that, hindi babalik, hindi mag-backwash. Yung mananganga lang. I had to tread lightly because this involved two cities. And I gave due respect to the position of Mayor Sam Gullias, and he's having to deal with his constituents in what could potentially be a bloody shall we say, government move to push back those settlers that are literally building on the riverbanks. And as well as Cebu City was not under my jurisdiction. It continues not to be under my jurisdiction. It is a charter city, even though paradoxically, Cebu City is the capital of Cebu Province. So I could not insist even for Cebu City because that was a judgment call. And I had to respect as well the officials of Cebu City. But the plan has always been, and that is why in 2 or 3 other rivers, including downstream of Mananga, ENB issued the ECC to the province of Cebu so that our direction, which is contained as well in the master plan that was approved by the province, which included rapid desilting, opening up the mouths of the rivers, but in a regulated fashion because we did not, all of these river sand and river stones, they make money there. Sometimes mag-over-quarrying naman. It's a kind of a tough balancing act. But yung Mananga River, well, I hope this will haunt former Ombudsman Martires. He suspended me because I desilted that Mananga River. Now it's thick with siltation.
Okay. Governor, so now we understand that you did have a plan for Mananga River as well as some of the other rivers around the province. But what I really want to know is, did you have a comprehensive river basins or watershed plan, a master plan? And if ever there is a study kung kailan po ito ginawa, meron po bang ganon?
Meron yang master plan for the Cebu water basin landscape. Yan ang ginawa ng JICA and all others years ago. Ito yung nasa upstream ng Mananga, which is the source. Diyan ang gagaling yung tubig, mga springs from that area, the Cebu water basin area. That is a comprehensive plan that was participated in by the officials then, possibly decades ago.
Okay, and was I think you're referring to the 2014 JICA study, nationwide po yun, so it's included in that. Was the desilting of Mananga River part po of that plan? So did you try to, kumbaga, since wala ngang national implementation, did you try to implement kahit piecemeal yung para sa province nyo po dyan sa Cebu?
Hold on. Itong desilting, I don't think that was even comprehended or even thought about by JICA then, how many years ago? 11 years ago. You see, even as early as last year, as late as last year, when there was no more water coming out from the pumping station of MCWD in Mananga, their own engineer said, because I was asking her, where's the source of water? Yung sagot ng engineer nila sa MCWD, a rainfall, ma'am. I had to tell her, come on. Are you telling me this river is called the Rainfall River? Of course not. There are springs, and the main spring water source is coming from this river, the water basin, and underground springs. Kasi drone footages show that there were splotches of water kahit na dry na yung river. Sabi ko, the water is underneath. We have to take out all of this siltation. Siltation, I don't think was ever contemplated. And even the engineers of DPWH, including MCWD, never thought of breaking up that hard asphalt na yun, na siltation, breaking it up. They were just saying, well, let's wait for rain.
Okay. Ma'am, but there's also criticism over some projects that were approved that were supposedly resulting in increased flooding. Like, for example, Governor Baricuatro was blaming quarry operations in the CCPL watershed. That's one. The other one is some criticism over yung Monterrasas sa Barangay Guadalupe. Previous proposals to build dun sa Monterrasas that were even stopped in 2011 by City Hall because of concerns over the effect downstream.
Ed, Barangay Guadalupe is a barangay of the city of Cebu.
Okay, yeah.
So the governor may criticize and criticize, but she has no authority over the city of Cebu. Now, over quarrying in the Mananga River, how could there be quarrying? Nagdi-desilt nga, kailangan nga talaga yan i-desilt eh. Walang nag-quarrying dyan. I think she bought the line of Martires then, na quarrying daw yun. Nobody thought of that solution, ha? Na i-desilt natin yan para makuha natin yung tubig na that is embedded there. Hindi lang makalabas. Ako na ang nagsabi na, let us desilt this. So I think up to now,
yes, ma'am.
Governor Baricuatro is still buying that line, even though that case that was filed against me was subsequently dismissed.
Ma'am, her reference was the CCPL watershed, the Central Cebu watershed, quarrying operations daw doon. I'm not sure if that's linked to the Malanga River, but that was her reference point.
Well, she should name particular points. I mean, if she does not even know that Monterrasas belongs to Barangay Guadalupe, and Barangay Guadalupe is a barangay of Cebu City, I think she still has a lot to study.
Ma'am, last na, yes or no question lang. So you believe kung tinuloy itong desiltation or desilting project nitong Mananga River na hindi nagyari yung baha? Is that what you believe?
Mangyayari pa rin. I mean, with an overabundance, so much rainfall in such short a time. Ngayon na lang yan nangyayari eh. But probably, it would not be as destructive if nasunod at kung ang flood control project doon, yung mga sheet piles, ibinaon up to 12 meters, hindi hanggang 3 meters lang.
Gov, finally, we saw a video of you also arriving in Camotes Island. Kayo po ay nagpapaabot ng tulong. Sumakay po kayo ng chopper, no? You arrived there via chopper. Is this in your personal capacity as a private citizen na governor?
Opo, ang tawag ko po sa akin, CIS po. Civilian in town, sir. So I am helping them still. The 4 municipalities of Camotes Islands, I was worried because we did not have any news, walang signal na. So I flew over to Camotes Islands and I met with all of the officials from mayors to the vice mayors and the barangay captains. I got a handle on what were urgently needed. Nagpapadala na tayo, like kahapon, on my private capacity pa rin. Inuna natin pagbigay ng tubig. No? Tubig is the primary commodity na kailangan sa lahat. Tubig at saka rice for Liloan, Compostela, and Consolacion kasi this can be reached by land. And by tonight or by early morning, magpapadala na tayo by barge ang tubig at saka iba pang tulong doon sa Camotes Islands.
Gov, sorry, pwedeng paulit lang po yung CIS. What does that mean right now? Yung capacity nyo po, you are a citizen
In service? Ganun po ba?
Pwede rin, pwede.
What's the real
in our
meaning?
in Bisaya, it's civilian in town, sir.
Civilian?
Civilian. Papaulit po, ma'am, wala pong Bisaya dito. Isa pa po. Civilian?
Okay. Yung civilian, civilian. In town, para bang kawawa. No, in town.
In taon.
In taon.
In taon,
Sir,
okay.
In town. Tapos sir, sir, S-I-R.
In town, sir. Okay, civilian in town, sir.
Okay.
CIS.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Pero maganda rin
Hindi
yung
ka nakabalo.
citizen in
Citizen in
service.
service. Hindi ka balo.
Thank you.
Dili.
Maraming salamat po. Thank you for joining us this evening, former Cebu Governor Gwen Garcia.
We're just going to take a quick break, but coming up, like our moment earlier at the ICI media briefing when its head held up a banner bearing words that did not spell restitution, reparation, or accountability. We have updates from the panel probing corruption when the big story returns. Keep it here, One News.
Welcome back to the big story. The Independent Commission for Infrastructure, or the ICI, has formally asked the Office of Ombudsman to investigate and prosecute public works officials. Included here is former Public Works Secretary Manny Bonoan. Bonoan and others could face possible charges for the construction of a 95 million peso flood control project in Barangay Bambang, Bocaue, Bulacan. The ICI says inspections showed that no structure was constructed at the specified location, despite the release and the full payment of the contract costs to contractor Top Notch Catalyst Builders Incorporated. Aside from Bonoan, named in the ICI report among others were former Undersecretaries Roberto Bernardo and Maria Catalina Cabral, former DPWH Bulacan 1st District Engineer Henry Alcantara, and former Assistant District Engineer Bryce Hernandez. The ICI, however, clarified that their report is only a recommendation.
We need whistleblowers. We need more. We need to compile more evidence. But right now, it's best that we recommend administrative liability on their part. As to the criminal, it can be a case built up by the Ombudsman. But we are already referring their names to the Ombudsman. So that's a big achievement on our part.
And after reading his statement for today, Reyes displayed a placard. He lamented about greed and selfishness amid the ICI's ongoing investigation.
We need to love our country. We need to love our countrymen. No, kailangan pag-ibig eh. Hindi yung swapang ka, pera tinatago mo, hindi mo sila share. Yun lang, we need love eh. Sometimes, you have to realize hindi naman tayo mayaman na country. So, we have to save.
Meanwhile, the ICI has been given a working budget of 41.5 million pesos until the end of the year. This will cover the Commission's expenses and salaries for 172 contractual staff positions. The ICI has been operating mostly on voluntary work since it was formed 2 months ago.
Meantime, the Bureau of Internal Revenue, or BIR, has filed tax evasion cases against 3 of the so-called BGC boys, or the Bulacan group of contractors, for alleged 1.6 billion pesos in tax deficiencies. BIR officials filed a complaint this morning against Henry Alcantara, Bryce Hernandez, and JP Mendoza before the Department of Justice. The Bureau conducted a lifestyle check on the 3 and found that they live beyond their declared income.
Iba yung sa sasakyan nila, meron kasama yan sa asset na nakita rin natin. So sinama rin natin sa tax liabilities na dahil nakabili sila ng ganyan pero hindi naman tugma based sa kanilang income tax or yung mga biniyarang buwis ay wala silang kakayanan bumili ng ganitong mga mamahaling sasakyan.
Lumagi adds that the 3 engineers used their kickbacks for flood control projects to gamble in casinos. In a privileged speech in September, Senator Ping Lacson accused the BGC boys of laundering kickbacks by placing them as bets in casinos, incurring 950 million pesos in gross losses in 13 casinos in the NCR, Cebu, and Pampanga.
Tiningnan din natin dahil lang dito sa mga pagdinig nakita naman natin na malaki ang ginagastos nila sa casino. So itong mga daan-daang milyon na ginagastos nila sa casino, siyempre, saan naman din yung galing. So, verify din natin at nakita natin na totoo nga na meron talaga silang mga ginastos dito sa casino na ilang daang milyon. Kaya naman sinama rin natin yan sa ating naging assessment.
This marks the second time that the BIR has filed tax evasion cases against flood corruption suspects, the first being the Discayas for allegedly failing to pay over 7 billion pesos in taxes. Lumagi says the BIR has requested COMELEC for copies of candidates' statement of contributions and expenditures, or SOSE. That's to check if they pay the correct taxes from donations they received during the campaign.
And over in the United States, President Donald Trump spoke at a forum of business leaders and global athletes in Miami 1 day after Democrats dominated the first major election day since he returned to the White House. This month, Trump is also celebrating the 1-year anniversary of his re-election to a second term. In his speech, the American leader was supposed to lay down his government's economic achievements so far, but instead hit familiar themes of combating crime, opposing transgender rights, and imposing tough immigration policies. He also said that the U.S., quote, lost a little bit of sovereignty in New York, a clear pot shot at New York City's elected mayor, Zohran Mamdani. 34-year-old Mamdani is New York City's first Muslim mayor, as well as the first of South Asian heritage and the first born in Africa.
If you want to see what congressional Democrats wish to do to America, just look at the result of this election in New York, where their party installed a communist as the mayor of the largest city in the nation. The decision facing all Americans could not be more clear. We have a choice between communism and common sense. Today, the United States has the strongest economy, the strongest borders, the strongest military, the strongest friendships, and the strongest spirit of any nation anywhere. We have the greatest economy right now. A lot of people don't see that.
Let's talk about these developments with Gabriel Young, who is the president of the Northern California chapter of the National Federation of Filipino-American Associations. Gabriel, welcome to the Big Story.
Kamusta po? Magandang gabi, mga kababayan. So happy to be here.
Magandang gabi, Gabriel. Of course, we're all wondering what do we make of this New York vote? It seemed to, at least on the surface, seems to be going against the current grain. Here you have the mayor of one of the most famous cities in the U.S., who was born in Uganda, who is of Indian ethnicity, who's a Muslim, and who was only naturalized in 2018. Baka mamaya yung ICE will ano. And then now you have Trump talking about communism. So what do you make of this?
For me, I am beyond ecstatic that Zoran Mandami is now the mayor-elect of New York City, one of the largest cities in the United States. Almost 10 million people live there. And there's just so much power with being mayor. And for me, that is what I see as the future of the Democratic Party. I do want to clarify that Zoran Mandami is not a communist. He advocates himself as a democratic socialist, mostly because he believes in expanding that social safety net, such as free buses, city-run grocery stores, and then also increasing taxes by 1 or 2% on the wealthy of New York City. However, of course, Republicans fear that this might lead to an exodus of New York, but I think we all know that it's really hard to necessarily uproot from where you're living. And so I'm really excited. And what made it even more shocking was that the current Democratic establishment, such as Majority Leader Hakeem Jeffries in the U.S. Congress or Senate Leader Chuck Schumer, did not really endorse Mandami. And so this really was a grassroots progressive movement. And most of the data shows that it's mostly young people between the ages of 18 to 24 who really voted for Zoran. And that is what I would consider that Gen Z blue wave, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what a lot of people are saying, this democratic quote-unquote sweep of a lot of major states, right? Some moderates made it, it's a referendum on Trump's anniversary in office, if you will. What is your take on all of that and that school of thought?
I would say we have to be very careful in calling this a sort of referendum of sorts. I'm actually currently from California, as you see in my title, and over in California, we have Prop 50, which was the Governor Newsom's redrawing of congressional districts to give California 5 more seats in response to President Trump's sort of advocacy over in Texas to give them 5 more seats by redrawing the congressional maps without having input. And so while we do have sort of propositions or movements such as what Governor Newsom did to sort of equalize the playing field, what we see in Virginia, New Jersey, New York, and even say Minnesota with their first Hmong Asian mayor is that states are realizing that, I wouldn't necessarily call it a referendum or a response to Trump, but realizing that with the limited control or opportunity to really advocate for what we want, we have to exercise that 10th Amendment of federalism and advance states' rights to protect the citizens. Because what Republicans love talking about is giving power away from the federal government to the states, and that is what Democrats are trying to use currently against. And so we saw this also around in 2017, 2018, during Trump's midterms back then, but that ended up hurting us again in 2019, where some more Republicans came in. So again, wouldn't necessarily call it a referendum or response necessarily to Trump or rejection of Trump, but rather that Democrats took the opportune time within their own states to combat the Republicanism that's going on in their states.
Well, Gabrielle, as we all know, we have a big Filipino community over there in the United States, and we even saw some Filipinos campaigning actively for Zoran Mamdani in New York. There were even jeepney-inspired posters. I wanted to ask you, how much do you think the Filipino-American community shaped the outcome of this elections?
I think a huge amount. So I want to shout out my good friend and colleague, Assemblymember Stephen Raga out in Queens, and then his team as well with the Filipino American Democratic Caucus out in New York, composed of Michelle Amor, John Bahia, and Tita Loida Luis Nicolas, who's one of the, I'd say, exemplars of Filipino excellence, being one of the millionaires here in the United States. And they poured heavily into the Democratic campaign of Zoran Mamdani. And we even see in this transition that there's a Filipino American who is also on that transition as well. And so bringing out the Filipino American voice, especially from Queens, New York, where former now Assemblymember Mamdani represented, goes to really show the impact of the Phil-Am vote and the Phil-Am voice, that they really organized the community to get out the vote, really fund it in order to see the change that they want to see over in New York, especially that when you look at the wealth and income distribution, the Filipino Americans are still really struggling with the affordability crisis in New York. And so whereas former Governor Cuomo or Curtis Lewa didn't really offer an answer to that affordability crisis, that answer came in the form of now Mayor-elect Zoran Mamdani. And so Zoran really truly speaks for the Filipino American community. It really understands the Asian American community as a whole, as someone part of the community.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are people who really have difficulty telling the difference between communism and anything that has the word socialism in the phrase. But given that, in the Philippines, we're more familiar with the SOCDEMs, the Social Democrats. What's a democratic socialist?
Yes, so a democratic socialist is sort of someone where I'll just throw it out there, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Bernie Sanders, that really within the confines of the capitalist system, that you work as an elected democratic official, and not democratic as the party, but just someone who's elected through folks directly voting for you, advocating for an expanded social safety net. And that is kind of where the socialist part comes in, if you will. And so important to know, of course, that socialism comes from Karl Marx and Engels out in Germany, that they really believe that it is that transitionary stage of where workers will take back sort of the economy that they've produced or have a say in it, and then eventually that transforms into communism as an official state ideology, where communism is the workers and the state completely owning the means to production. So in this case, sort of democratic socialism is the hybrid of where you can have that expanded social safety net or that expanded, I'd say, social insurance of socialism in a capitalist system. And so that is exactly what Zoran Mamdani really proposes, where he, again, advocates for free buses, free transportation, all funded by those who make much more, the top 1 or 2% of New York. So what this goes to say is, again, the middle class or the lower class folks of New York won't necessarily be the ones that are taxed or being extracted from, but rather they are being the ones who are being supported by those who make much more than them. It's just holding those who are making more accountable and being able to provide an equitable wealth distribution and that strong social safety net for everyone. Again, when we all support the ones who are at the most vulnerable or at the bottom, we all win.
Okay, speaking of winning, the midterm elections just about a year away. What does this win do for the Democratic Party, which unfortunately, as opinion polls show, they're not doing so well either, right? As even if Trump is also not doing well. Well, Prop 50, as you mentioned, this could help the case. How do you see the midterms shaping up?
Definitely. What I see, my projection of the midterm shaping up, is that Democrats are going to get a few more seats in the House of Representatives and maybe the Senate, but I can't be for sure that will compose of an entire majority. Because again, even if we get 5 more Democratic seats from California because of these redrawn congressional maps, Texas still has their regional congressional maps, which is given 5 seats to Republicans. It's also to note that states like Ohio and also over in Illinois are redrawing their congressional maps as well, giving Republicans a bit more power there. However, California is one of the few states that actually chose to respond to that redrawing of congressional maps from President Trump with their own redrawing of congressional maps. So it's really, I'd say, unknown to say, or the future is a little unclear because of sort of the imbalance of congressional seats just exploding at the moment. What does make California different, though, is that the people actually voted for this referendum in order to redraw those congressional maps. Whereas over in Texas, over in Ohio, it was purely through the state legislature ran through Republicans. And so, all in all, again, really unclear, but hopefully we can see at least Democrats getting maybe 1 or 2 more votes in the Senate and in the House of Representatives.
Okay. Maraming salamat for joining us tonight, Gabriel Young of the National Federation of Filipino-American Associations. Salamat.
And we're pausing for another quick breather, but right after that, the Office of the Ombudsman looks at extradition as a way to bring home resigned Congressman Zaldico. That and more are next on The Big Story. Keep it here.
Thanks for staying with us here on The Big Story. Resigned lawmaker Zaldico may be extradited if he insists in hiding abroad. Assistant Ombudsman Vico Clavano says in a radio interview that extradition is an option to bring home Ko only if a case is already filed against him. Recall that the government resorted to extradition in the case of expelled Negros Oriental Congressman Arnie Tevez, who flew to Timor-Leste after being charged for various crimes. Ko's lawyer Rui Rondain claims that the former congressman is deathly afraid to come home due to threats to his life.
Meantime, the Ombudsman has sought Ko's response after the ICI recommended charges against him and dozens more over an anomalous dike project in Oriental Mindoro. But the embattled lawmaker did not submit any counter-affidavit, believing his case has already been prejudged anyway. Clavano says the Ombudsman will act on the recommendation with or without Ko's counter-affidavit. But for former IBP President Domingo Cayosa, another quick way to bring Ko back home is to cancel his passport.
Hindi naman ma-aresto siya doon, pero magandang gawin yan ng executive branch, i-cancel ang kanyang passport para maging undocumented alien siya, saan man siya papunta. So under normal local rules or laws, pag wala kang valid na passport, undocumented alien ka, pwede ka nilang pabalikin sa bansang pinanggalingan mo.
And for our big picture tonight, the ultimate star maker is now a kapatid. Johnny Manahan, known in the industry as Mr. M, has signed a contract with MediaQuest Artist Agency and MQuest. Mr. M was instrumental in the stardom of Enrique Hill, Andrea Brillantes, and Piolo Pascual, to name a few.
Supreme mandate is to create a tougher, leaner, and more exciting center for artists. I think we are going to do brilliant things.
Present in the welcome event for Mr. M are MediaQuest Chairman Manuel V. Pangilinan, MediaQuest President and CEO Jane Jimenez Basas, and TV5 President and CEO Guido Zaballero.
Redefine the landscape yet again, and we are absolutely thrilled to be building our future.
I'm glad that you finally found your home in TV5.
Oh, welcome.
Welcome, Mr. M.
Yes, I'm so excited to see more stars. Hindi. The stars he's gonna make. Siyempre si Mr.
Miss V tsaka si Miss Y. Welcome to
Mr.
Mr.
X.
All right, and that will do it for us on The Big Story this Thursday. Thank you so much for watching.
We are back here tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. We'll see you then.
Kapatid, we are one news, all sides, all the time. Good night.